Today we'll be discussing a series of lessons on research methods, where we'll be discussing how to conduct research. So the first lecture will be just introducing ourselves to research in terms of what is research. So one of the first issues which most people really don't understand about is the meaning of research. There are several definitions when you are trying to actually define what research is, but it's a more complex it's not very complex, but people tend to make it complex, and people tend to confuse research. By research, I think one of the most main problem which people tend to do when trying to understand research is to confuse research to solving a problem. Research is not like it's not like you want to solve the problem, but by research, you want to find the reasons why the problem is happening, and you want to find the reasons behind the problem. So it's not like when you're doing research, you want to solve a problem by doing research. By doing research, you want to find what might be causing a problem, what might be causing a challenge, what might be causing something, whatever issue which might be affected. So by doing research, you should be able to to identify some of those things. Then using the information which we have identified, you can then be able to solve the problem. I give, for example, let's say you are at a clinic, people are not coming, at the clinic to take their drugs. So you want to find out reasons why people are not coming out to the clinic. And you can conduct a research. You can ask people, and it's why are they not coming to the clinic to take their medication. You can ask them, a lot of questions, depending whatever issue depending, with the reasons. So maybe Medicaid, they're not coming because they don't have pass fare, the clinic is far, they were challenged with other issues. You can then get that information from as many people as you can. You can then use that information to come up with the recommendations of solving this problem of people not coming to clinic to get their medication. So let's get this very clear. But for research, let's not confuse research as you want to solve the problem of people not coming to clinic. No. You can do a research to find out why are they not coming to the clinic to take their medication. Using what the findings which we have, you can then formulate the recommendations which can then be implemented so that people can start coming to the clinic. So I think this needs to be very, very clear, where we are supposed not to confuse research with we're not supposed to confuse research with yes, you can use research to come up with you can use research to solve problems, but the purpose of research is to find reasons why problems are occurring. Then using that information, you can then recommend, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? But for you to really come up with that process of that process of to reach that process of solving whatever, of coming up with the recommendation. Research is a systematic problem, and it is a systematic process. So it's a systematic process. You have to do it in a systematic manner. So this slide summarizes the stages when you want to do research. So the first thing when you want to do your research, you need to at least have a problem, what you want to address. In this case, I gave an example of people not coming to the clinic. That would be a problem. But there are several other types of problems. You can have people not adhering to their drugs, people having STI, people acquiring HIV, and so many other things. And then from that, after having your problem, what do? you plan you plan your research, how we are going to conduct this team and this research. You don't just go out, and start, you need to have some process where you sit down. In the research, we call that a research proposal, where you're going to write exactly and what you are going to change, what you are going to do. And in that process of planning what you're going to do, um, you don't, when you're doing research, you don't study everyone, you don't study the population, but you take a sample, a small portion of the people who are affected or the people who are facing the challenge. Then from those few people, you are going to collect data, which is data collection. After you collect your data, you analyze that data, and you're collecting information on why people are not coming to clinic. There might be several reasons why these people are not coming to clinic. So you may need to really to pull all those results, those reasons, and consolidate them, and you analyze them, you process that data. Then from there, you make your conclusions and to say people are not coming to clinic because of so and so and so and so. You come up with your reports, whatever which is the final research project, whatever you then write at the end. Then in that report, you can then come up with the recommendations on what is supposed to be done. So in summary, research is a process, and it is a systematic process. It starts by identifying a problem. You design, your research, how you're going to conduct it. You collect your data and you analyze the data. After analyzing the data, you make conclusions from that data and you recommend, and it is so that you address whatever issues you are having challenges with. We have had problem with people confusing research as, we'll discuss this later in detail, where people think research is about chapter. There's chapter 1, there's chapter 2, there's chapter whatever. The final report, that is the one which is chapters, but the process of conducting research is just that process where we start with a problem, you plan, and you plan how you're going to find information causing that problem. You don't start the whole population, but you start a sample. Then from that sample, you collect information, you analyze that information, you make conclusion from that information. Then you come up with recommendations to solve your problem. There are several types of research here, and we will not go into detail in terms of types of research, but it's a bit complex, and it can be more complicated in terms of how research is defined. But generally, we have. I will discuss three of the types of other research. Three types of research. The first type of research is what we call exploratory research. Exploratory and it's research. So usually, when you're doing exploration research, it is undertaken with aim of clarifying ambiguous problem. Then generally, the problem is not known. There's very little information about the problem. Remember, you're exploring. You're what? You're exploring. I hope you have heard this thing which happens, in the mining. When people maybe there's issue, maybe they say there's gold has been found in such an area. People will go there and explore. They are not sure whether whether the gold is there or the gold is not in. It is not whether the gold is there or the gold is not there. So they go there, they explore to really see. So there are some things there are some problems, some challenges or whatever, which actually there's little information which is known about that and about that problem or that challenge. So if you don't know much about the problem, you can conduct what we call exploratory research. So by exploring, it just means you don't know much, there's little information, so you're going out there to get more information. Then when you get more information, it's more like, I think you've heard this concept of grapevine, things which are just happening, within the corridors. People are speaking about the issues, but nothing much is known about that issue. To give a good example, For example, these days we're having the problem of coronavirus. Most of the issues to do with corona is more of exploratory, because we don't know much about corona at the moment. So because of that, most of the research which is happening around corona is exploratory research, where we want to know, where did this corona come from? What are the complications of this corona, and all those other things, and all those other things. Then we have another type of research which is called descriptive. So usually descriptive, what can I say? Descriptive research, usually we do descriptive research when knowledge on it, when previous knowledge of the problem and it exists. We know already. No, there are problems which they are there. Like we know people, but they don't take treatment. We can't say I want to explore to see if people are not taking their medication. We know people, they don't adhere to medication. People, they don't. There's unsafe sex. There are STIs. So by descriptive research, we want to actually see. We are describing the characteristics of a population or a phenomena. We are describing who is affected, where are they affected, what time are they affected. Some of you, I think you may have remembered when you are discussing, when we discussed epidemiology, when you are saying epidemiology, we are describing a disease in terms of place, person, energy, and time. So the person is who is affected, where are they affected, at what time are they affected, who is at risk of getting this disease. So the problem is already known. We know, like HIV, we already know with HIV is there, it's affecting people. But we might need to study it in detail, in further, just to describe now, to see who is affected, where are they affected, what time are they affected, and so many other things. So I think the same, I can also give the example for coronavirus. But initially, there used to be issues about, but now we know corona is there. But the next stage, I think we've passed to the stage of exploratory, trying to really understand what's happening. People are now understanding, the basics of corona, but now there's issues of now to understand who is affected and who is at risk of dying, who is at risk of getting corona. But we know the problem now. We now understand it fully. But in terms of describing now who is at risk, who is likely to die, where do you get it, how do you prevent it, what are the fears, what are those things? So we can actually do descriptive, because now there's information which is known and it is about corona. So there are a lot of those other examples, but they're not like really medically related. So try to stick to the examples which I was giving. Then the third type of research, which also need to understand, there's what we call causal research. Causal is causal. It means causative, and what is causing this. So we want to cause our relationship. The aim of that is to identify the cause and effect, and we want to see the cause and effect. So by causal relationship, in most cases, so if you try to sequence these research examples I was giving you, the first was explore, and you explore, you get more information. After you get more, information, you now know you can do descriptive. But later, there's a higher level of stage where we do what we call causal research, where we want to see, the relationship between things. And to say, for example, I give a good example of smoking. For example, we might see a lot of, and you might say we're describing lung cancer. As part of describing lung cancer, we realized that most of the patients who are developing lung cancer, they are smoking. And we realized maybe 90% of the patients, describe that. But around 90% of those, they've got a history of smoking. So we can now do a further study, which is a causality study, where I want to now analyze, and does smoking cause lung cancer? That's a different stage of research in this case, where now we want to then to find causality. For example, we can do the same for HIV. We have a group of, and we do a descriptive to see who is getting infected by HIV. Then we realize out of the people who are on HIV, the majority of them are not circumcised, but those who are circumcised, they are not getting HIV. So we can actually do a research to see now and to assess this causal. So it becomes a causal research or causality where you are assessing and this. So generally, this is how there are several types of research which can be done, but you can also have experimental research. You can also have intervention research, and it's all those which are complicated. But for your level, most of your research which we expect you to do, we don't expect you to do causal research, but we expect you to do explorative research, but make sure if you choose to do a research which is exploratory, you are understanding, and you are understanding, you can't explore things which are already known. You need to be sure what you are exploring is worth exploring. But most of your research, they fall into the descriptive, where you're just describing things, who is affected, where they are affected, what are the risk factors of someone getting this? What are the factors associated with this? That is most of your research. Causal research is a bit advanced, and we don't expect you to be doing causal research. So one of the important thing which is important when we are doing before you start research, we say it is to define a problem. You need to make sure before you start doing your research, you need to be very sure your problem which you want to study is very clear, and you know what this problem which I want to study. And because if you usually most of people have challenges in research because they don't do it they don't do it properly. People will make errors. Why? Because you're not doing your research. You haven't defined your problem correctly. So usually, if you check most of the research, you start with what we call statement of the problem, or a problem statement here. People, they say different, they pronounce it differently, but to me, it doesn't matter. It's about phenomena, whether you call it problem statement or statement of the problem. It doesn't, and it is not a problem. It's not, to me, to us, it's not a problem. But what is important is for you to understand, before you do research, you need to understand what is the problem I want to research on. Remember, when I said from the start, doing research, when you are doing research, you don't do research to solve problems, and you do research to, yes, you can solve problem in the long run, but what you want to do, you want to see what is causing, what is behind the problem. Then from there, you get several things which you can then come up with recommendations to solve that that problem. So if you check, so finding a problem is not very difficult. So when you start your research, you begin with a statement of the problem. This covers what is your research question, what do you want to research on. You state your problem as you see it and understand it. And one of the most serious challenges which we have is about having poorly defined research problems. In most cases, most students, they struggle to come up with a research problem. And if you have a poorly framed research problem, it will give you problems. Then it will then lead to all some of these challenges. So it's always very critical to make sure you have a good researching problem. So there are, as I say, if you remember from what I was discussing and in this chart, in terms of type of research, a potential research problem arises when there are three conditions exist. Either there's a discrepancy between what it is and what it should be, and things are not going the way they're supposed to go. We expect people to be taking their drugs, but they're not taking their drugs. Why are they not taking their drugs? We expect people to be using condoms, but they're not using condoms. Why are they not using condoms? And a question exists about why there's a discrepancy. I think the same applies. At least two possible and plausible answers exist to the question. You know, you're trying to solve something, but there are different explanations, or there are different things which are trying to answer, but they don't know which of these two is the exactly. So for you to get the correct information, you can conduct a research so that you solve that dilemma. So identifying a problem is the first essential step in designing a research proposal. It must be followed by a process of problem definition. You need to define your problem. So the research problem must now be identified in terms of its occurrence. Remember, we said it's called a problem statement. When you're now writing your statement of the problem, remember, you're now defining your problem in terms of its occurrence, its intensity, its distribution, other measures, and other measures for which data are already available. The aim is to determine what is currently known about the problem and the reason why the problem exists. And so you have a problem of people not taking their drugs, or people not coming to the clinic. Occurrence, you need to define, you need to quantify. You have got this clinic where people are not coming, and they are not coming to collect mshonga. What is you can quantify or intensify this problem. How many people are not coming? And what is the total number of people at the clinic? How many people do you expect to come per clinic? And how many people do you expect to come to clinics per day? Out of those, we expect how many are coming? What proportion is it not coming? And of this proportion which is not coming, are they men? Are they, where are they coming from? And all those things. So you need to kind of now describe your problem so that it becomes easy for you to conduct to do the research. So as you are describing the problem, as I said, you describe how wide the problem is, what is the magnitude of the problem, who is affected by the problem, what is the distribution of this problem, and how often does the problem occur, what are the social or cultural practices linked with the problem, what are the costs or the consequences of this problem. So remember, usually it makes sense to study or to conduct a research focusing on problems which have some consequences. So if a problem doesn't have consequences, it doesn't have issues, then why waste your time studying that problem? So you need to kind of focus, your energy and your time studying problems really, which if you study them, there's a benefit of studying those problems. So in most cases, after describing your problem, who is affected, where are they affected, what are the numbers, what are the quantities, all those issues, you then need to have like your statement, in that problem statement, where you then describe, if this problem is not solved, what are the consequences of this problem. And if you don't solve this problem, what are the consequences? Because remember, we are motivating. Remember, doing research is all about, you need to be motivating your research. You are motivating your research. You want people to, and you want your researchers, your supervisors, to see, oh, if you do this research, it's important for you to do it. Why? Because of its importance. Because if you don't address it, people will die, people with all these complications. So we are putting that statement so that it's more like justifying your research, but why is it important to do that, that research. So one of the first aspects as you guys start preparing for your research, you need to to come up with research problems. And you need to identify research and problems. That is very, very important. And how do you find out a research problem? If you check on bullet number 2, you guys are studying HIV and AIDS and counseling. So we expect you to have to really focus and to focus on problems. We expect you to focus or look for problems which are HIV related and or counseling related. Whatever thing you learned, is in part of your course, whether it's counseling, whether it's HIV, whether it's home-based care, whether it's gender-based violence, stigma, discrimination, as long as it's part of, you are free to identify a problem in those areas. But usually, it's difficult to come up with with research. So we used to do research workshops, but now because of this Corona thing and online learning, it might be difficult to conduct those. It might be difficult to conduct those workshops. So you need to start really working on your research. So one of the easier way to do it, it's often very difficult for you to come up with a research problem if you don't go to attachment. And if you see the problem should either come from your work or attachment place or the community where you live and must be researchable. So if you're not exposed, you're not really going to attachment, you're not seeing patients, you're not, it becomes very difficult for you to come up with a research. But yeah, so it's complex, but usually we kind of advise you to at least think around 5 problems which you think they are relevant to this course which you are studying. Then from those five problems, try to write one paragraph and for one of those where you think this is a problem. Then from there we can discuss the next steps, in terms of what to do. So briefly, what we discussed today was introducing you to research. What is research? And we said research is not, you don't do research, you solve problem by doing research, but the purpose of doing research is not, you can solve problem, yes, but the primary point is to find the reasons why the problems are occurring. Then using the information, you can then come up with the recommendations, blah, 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 and everything. So, but that's it. And for you to do that, it's a process. You identify your problem, you plan for that, and you plan for that research, how we are going to do it. You take a sample, and you can't start the whole population. You can start one of a show mandate. Then you collect your data, you analyze your data, you can make conclusions from that data, and you recommend and disseminate the information. But for you to do that, one of the important aspects is to have a problem. A problem. For you to, and your problem, we discussed how you're supposed to define your problem so that it makes a lot of sense. Otherwise,